This is Caesar de Bello Gallico IV, chapter 26. We last left the Romans, who are under Caesar and invading Britain. They were attempting to disembark onto the shore, but the Brits were not allowing them to do so. The Romans were having a spot of bother because the ships could not get close enough to the shore due to the large size of the ships. The Romans jumping off the ships were jumping off into deep water, and they could not effectively defend themselves from the attacks of the Brits, who are on the shore, therefore on dry land, and are able to more easily fight. So we start off having just had the Aquilifer, the eagle bearer of the 10th Legion, in the last chapter. He roused the other men by saying that they ought to follow him and not betray the eagle which he was carrying to the enemy. He, meaning the Aquilifer, he himself would do his duty both to the Republic and also to his imperator, to his commander. And of course, Caesar must have blushed. The Aquilifer jumped down into the water and began to carry the eagle towards the enemy. The rest of the soldiers could not bear that disgrace, and so they jumped in after him. And now we come into Caesar continuing, Pugnatum est ab utrisque acriter. Remember that Latin is much more comfortable with the passive voice than English, so we start off with Pugnatum est. It was fought. You can also translate this verbal as a noun. There was fighting, or fighting occurred. Fighting was happening. Ab utrisque, ab plus the ablative of a personal agent of uterque, utraque, utrumque. Each side, there are two sides. There are the Brits and the Romans, and we're talking about each one, either one. Acriter, the adverb of acer, acris, acre, fierce, harsh, sharp. It modifies the verb pugnatum est, but notice how far away it is. Pugnatum est at the beginning and acriter at the end. That's emphasizing acriter. So he's telling us that a fight is going on. Pugnatum est. It was fought. The fight happened by both sides, on both sides. It was being carried on by both sides, acriter, fiercely, harshly. And the emphasis is on the harshly. If you wanted to translate pugnatum est as there was fighting, then you would translate acriter not as an English adverb, as it is in Latin, but as an adjective, so that there was fierce fighting on both sides, or fighting was fierce on both sides. Nostri tamen, quod neque ordines servare, neque firmiter insistere, neque signa subsequi poterant. Atque alius alia ex navi quibuscumque signis occurrerat se adgregabat, magnopere perturbabantur. And we'll stop there at the semicolon. So we have Nostri tamen. Tamen being post-positive, yet still nevertheless. So we should translate that first. So nevertheless, yet still, even though the fighting was fierce. Nostri. Our men, with the men, the viri being implied, nominative, plural, masculine, nostri, and our men. You don't need the viri there, we just have the adjective as a substantive. And because, nevertheless, our men, quod. Quod here is going to be a causal quod, beginning a causal clause. Quod, because, and it will be followed up by the indicative, poterant. Neque, we have the correlative conjunction neque. You could also see its form neque. Neque, and it's followed up by neque again and neque again. So in neque ordines servare, there we have an infinitive. Neque firmiter insistere, then we have another infinitive. Neque signa subsequi, then we have another infinitive. And all of these are complementary infinitives hinging upon the verb in this clause, poterant. So that looks maybe pluperfect at first glance, but notice it is formed from the present stem, pot, and not the perfect stem, potu. So it's not potuerant, which would be the pluperfect. This is poterant, which is the imperfect. So nevertheless, even though the fighting was fierce, our men, comma, because they were able to, here are our infinitives, neque, neither servare ordines, keep or hold their ranks. Neque firmiter insistere, they were able to neither, nor to insistere, to stand up firmly or to stand up straight, because they're standing up in rather deep water in the ocean, and I imagine that the waves and the movement and the currents, they're keeping the men from being able to stand up properly. In rather deep water in the ocean, it's rather hard to stand up straight. Neque signa subsequi, another infinitive, and they were able to, nor subsequi, to gather or to gather underneath their standards, to subsequi, to follow up underneath their signa. Where the signa, the standards go, the soldiers go. They gather around their standards. The standards have the legion number, the cohort number, the century number, so that the soldiers know where to stand because they know their rank, they know their insignia, they know where they're supposed to be in the Roman army. So they follow that standard. However, in this chaotic situation that we find ourselves, things aren't exactly working out to their same level of discipline. So servare, insistere, and subsequi, all complementary infinitives based upon the poterant. Atque is a souped up et. And also, and even, alius, alia. We have alius and alia, and remember the Romans like to take the same word and put them side by side, especially if they are different case. They find that fun. The second A in alia should have a macron over it, and it should be ablative going with the ex navi. And for navi, you should read the usual nawe. So we have ex nawe alia. Quibuscumque signis occurrerat se adgregabat. And the way to go about this is the subject is alius. And when we have alius and another alius, we do some and then others. So some do this, others do this. So it's going to be some ex navi, some from one ship do this, or one from one ship does this, whereas alia, another from another ship would do this. And what they're doing, these alios, they're doing adgregabat, which must take a direct object because it's a transitive verb. So that's what the se is doing there. They are gathering themselves, or they're running up to and it takes quibuscumque to whichever standards that he had run to, occurrerat. So quibuscumque, that's going to take us into a relative clause whose verb is occurrerat. So one soldier, that's the alius, would say adgregabat, would gather, or he would link up or hook up with quibuscumque, whichever standard he had occurrerat had run to. So one man, alius, from one ship would link up with whatever standards he had come to, and others from the other ships would do the same thing. So there's no sense of order. Everything is kind of chaotic. One from one ship and one from another ship would run up to whichever standards he could. Magnopere perturbabantur. And because of all that, they can't keep their ranks, they can't stand up straight, they can't gather under their standards, so each guy from whatever ship is just running up to whatever standards he can. Magnopere perturbabantur. Nostri is the subject. Our men were being thrown into a great confusion. They were greatly disturbed. They were being greatly upset. I prefer to translate this. They were thrown into great confusion. Translate magnopere more as an adjective than it's that is the adverb form of magnos. And you can do that here. Magnopere perturbabantur. They were being greatly disturbed, upset. They were thrown into a great confusion. Why were they being thrown into a great confusion? Because, quod, and that's what the quod clause is doing there. It's just, it comes first. Hostes vero. This is like that one passage where we talked about the difficulties the Roman soldiers had in attempting to disembark, and the problems that they were having and the issues that they were having in the water, whereas the Brits on dry land were just fine. Here we have something similar. So before the semicolon, we have Nostri, the Romans, our guys. And here we have hostes vero, but the enemy, with vero being a more souped up sed. And it allows it to be post-positive, so there's an emphatic word hostes. But the enemy, with the emphasis being on the enemy, notis omnibus vadis, ablative absolute, with all of the wadis, wadum e neuter, shoals, shallows, the places where you can wadum wade, you can tread water in, with all of the shoals, the shallows known. So since the enemy knew all the shallows, I would say this is a causal ablative absolute, because they knew all the shoals. Ubi ex litore aliquos singulares ex navi egredientes conspexerant, incitatis equis impeditos ad oriebantur, plures paucos circumsistebant, ali ab latare aperto in universo stella coequiebant. So yeah, great sentence, classic Caesar sentence. Ubi, when, temporal clause. Ubi, and its main verb is conspexerant, ex litore aliquos. So when they had conspexerant, when they had espied, they had caught sight of, conspicio, the direct object is aliquos singulares. Some of our men, any of our men, singulares, that means in single file. And the aliquos is referring to the Romans. Ex litore, what's that doing there? Ablative separation. It just means that the enemy is from the shore, on the shore. So, but the enemy, with all the shoals and shallows known, when they were from the shore, had caught sight of any of our men, single file, egredientes, disembarking a navi. You don't have to add disembarking from the ship. You can either say they were leaving from the ships, egredientes, present active participle agreeing with aliquos singulares, or you can say that just disembarking. You don't add ship to disembark. The bark part of disembark means ship. So when they had espied any of our men disembarking, and they're doing this from the shore, and if you want, you can take the ex litore, take it out of the temporal clause and put it with the enemy. But the enemy from the shore, since they knew all the shallows, when they caught sight of any of our men disembarking in single file, incitatis equis impeditos ad oriebantur. They were ad oriebantur. You can see the root is orior, which means to rise. Ad orior means to rise up against. In this way, they're attacking. So they would attack. They were. It's a deponent verb, so looks passive, translate as active, imperfect tense. They were attacking impeditos, our men, our dudes, while they were impeditos, encumbered, hindered, because they're getting off in single file. They're jumping into deep water. They can't defend themselves very well, so they are impeditos. They're hindered. They are unfooted. In pes pedis. They are encumbered, and they attack them with their incitatis equis, with their horses spurred on. So after spurring on their horses. So when the enemy had caught sight of any of our men disembarking in single file, they would ad oriebantur. The imperfect here is showing an action of what they would do continuously, which in English we sometimes use not with was or were, but with would. They would, it was their practice or their wont to during this time, to attack our men encumbered with their horses spurred on, by means of their spurred on horses. They would spur on their horses and attack our men while they were at a disadvantage, while they were encumbered. Plures paucos circumsistebant. We have plures and paucos. Several plures circumsistebant were surrounding. They were going in a circle around paucos, around few. Many surrounded few. Ali ab latare aperto in universo stella coequiebant. And others were hurling, coequio, con yacio, were hurling their weapons, their tela, spears, in universos, upon a group of men ab latare aperto, at their open flank. So they're in single file, so they're kind of bunched together, and many of the Brits, plures circumsistebant, were surrounding few, as in few Roman soldiers, and others were hurling, other Brits were hurling their spears ab latare aperto, at the open flank of the men universos that were all bunched together. They're hurling their tela in universos, at the bunched up men together ab latare aperto, from their exposed or open flank. So the Romans are having a terrible time. Quod cum animad vertis set Caesar, We have a cum clause there, but the operative emphatic word is quod because it's a relative and it must relate or link back to everything that came before, which is why that is accusative, singular, and neuter. Which thing? Or we could say in English, all this stuff, all these things. Start translating the cum. I would say it's cum temporal. When Caesar is the subject, Caesar anima vertisset, had turned his thought, turned his mind, anima verto. He had turned his attention to, quote, this thing. So when Caesar had noticed this thing, turned his thought to this thing, what then does he do? It's pluperfect subjunctive, temporal clause, where I guess that the main verb is going to be perfect tense. Scaphas langarum navium, item speculatoria navigia militibus complere jussit. There we go. Et quos laborantes conspexerat, his subsidia submittebat. And there we go. Another imperfect at the end. So, scaphas langarum navium. The scaphas, best translated as the English skiffs. These are small ships that are sort of, I would imagine them to be like lifeboats on a bigger ship. These are small ships that are attached to the warships, the long ships, which is what that's doing there in the langarium navium, the genitive plural. So the skiffs of the warship, or you could even say the skiffs outfitted to each warship. Item speculatoria navigia militibus complere jussit. Item means and likewise, and also the speculatoria navigia. That's usually translated as spycraft, and you can see speculator, which is speculor, our usual word for to look at or to spy. Navigia, boat, sailing, so a spy boat, spycraft. And he jussit, that's subject is Caesar. So when Caesar noticed this thing, that the soldiers were having a lot of trouble here, but the Brits were doing all right, he jussit, he ordered the scaphas, the skiffs, that's going to be our subject accusative, ordered the skiffs outfitted to each warship, to the warships, and the spycraft, speculatoria navigia, to be compleri. That would normally be an objective infinitive. You order a subject accusative to do an objective infinitive. To be filled, militibus, with soldiers, by means of soldiers. Militibus, ablative of means with compleo, to be filled up with. Et quos laborantes conspexerat, and quos, quos is going to be, actually, we have a postcedent again, laborantes conspexerat, and those whom he conspexerat had conspexerat caught sight of laborantes, present active participle agreeing with the relative quos. The antecedent's coming up. It's actually not an antecedent, it's a postcedent. So present active participle toiling, in toil, who were struggling, and those whom he had seen struggling, his subsidia submittebat. He was submitto, sending, or sending subsidia. Usually when these words go together, subsidium and submitto, it just means to send aid or to send help. And we have, of course, the dative his. His is the antecedent / postcedent of the relative quos. And those whom he saw in distress, laborantes, toiling, in toil, who were suffering, who were having a spot of bother, he submittebat, he was sending subsidia aid, his, to these, to them. Nostri, simul in arido constiterunt, suis omnibus consecutis, in hostes impetum fecerunt, atque eos in fugam dederunt. All right, that's all it took, huh? So the men are having trouble disembarking. They're in single file. The enemies are surrounding them and pelting them with javelins and spears. Caesar says, oh no, how terrible. And so he orders the smaller ships on the warships, the skiffs and the spycraft, to be filled up with soldiers. And he sends the soldiers in the smaller ships to go help the soldiers who are disembarking and are under attack, who are in laborantes, in distress. Nostri, our men, once again the weary is implied. Simul in arido constiterunt, simul, as soon as in arido constiterunt, as soon as they stood they set up, they took position in arido on dry land. So it looks like our men are getting a little bit of help from these soldiers and the skiffs and the spycraft. So finally, when they're able to disembark properly, to wade through the water, and to constituerunt, to set up or to stand firm on arido, on dry land, get their dry land legs, suis omnibus consecutis, with everything consecutis followed up, or with everyone, with all of their fellows having joined them. So once they all got together, once they got the gang back together, in hostes impetum fecerunt, they made an attack, made an assault upon the enemy. So simul, as soon as our men stood on dry land and all their fellows had joined them, with all their fellow soldiers consecutis having followed up. Remember, consequor, deponent verb, looks active, looks passive, translate as active. This is deponent. It made an assault upon the enemy, atque, and also eos in fugam dederunt, and put them into flight, and sent them into rout, gave them a flight, gave them a rout. So that was easy, once they, did some stuff. Neque longius prosequi potuerunt, quod equite scersum tenere atque insulam capere non potuerant. Stop there. So neque longius, nor and not. You won't see et non. You'll see nec or neque. And if it's got another nec or neque, so it's a correlative, neither nor, like we had at the beginning with neque, ordines, servare, neque, firmiter, insistere, etc. Here we just have neque meaning et non, so and not, or just English nor. Potuerant, that is the perfect of possum. We've had the imperfect poterant before. Notice that this is potu, perfect stem, potuerant. They were not able, nor were they able, and they were not able, nor were they able to prosequi, to sequor, once again, deponent verb, looks passive, translate as active, to follow forward, or just, I would say, follow, longius, very far, farther, too far. And they were not able to follow too far, nor were they able to follow them for very long. Quod, causal, because, equite scersum tenere, atque insulam capere non potuerant. So we have the indicative, because potuerant. There's the pluperfect of possum, where we had just had the perfect potuerunt, and then we had the imperfect poterant. So look at the difference between poterant, the imperfect up at the top, and this verb potuerant. The endings erant, though they are the same, notice that they are formed off of different stems, pot and potu, and that makes all the difference. Poterant up there is the imperfect, and potuerant is the pluperfect. Quod non poterant, because they had the equites, the knights, because the knights had not been able to tenere cursum, to hold their course, atque, and also to capere insulam, and to take the island, to reach the island. Remember, the cavalry, the knights, the equites, they were put on a different group of transport ships, and they had to march to a different port that was south of the one Caesar set out from. And then they also left later because they had, one, to move to a different port, two, they had difficulty disembarking towards the island. And as we'll find out later, they will have even more difficulty because they haven't even arrived yet. So we have the complementary infinitives tenere and capere hinged upon the causal clauses verb potuerant, which is pluperfect, because the knights had not been able to hold their course and to reach the island. Hoc unum ad pristinam fortunam Caesari defuit. Of course it was. Hoc unum, this one thing, this singular thing, this alone, this thing only, ad pristinam fortunam, in regards to the former or pristine fortune, success, luck, Caesari defuit, failed Caesar. Desum, you can see it's de and fuit. We have desum there, and it takes the dative, to fail, to be lacking in something. So this one thing, it was only this thing that the cavalry had not arrived at the island yet. This one thing failed Caesar in ad pristinam fortunam, in his earlier success, in keeping up with his earlier victory, his earlier luck, his earlier success. Once again, Caesar likes to talk about fortuna, about luck. Caesar likes to plan, he likes to plot, he likes to make strategy, but Caesar also talks a lot about luck and how luck can turn the tide of a battle. No matter how well you plan a situation, luck, fortuna, she's fickle, and she can always come in and screw up all of the best laid plans. So this one thing, the cavalry not showing up, that failed Caesar in keeping up with ad pristinam fortunam, his earlier luck.